This is the best year to retire, and I'm going to share why, but I also want to share a few barriers that cause people to second guess if they're making the right decision. So in this video, we'll look at 3 big things that'll tell you that you're ready to do it this year, to retire now, and then also 3 things that are stopping people that it's actually false. Now, I'm Dave Zoller, and my team and I, we've been helping people retire at Streamline Financial for the last 16 years. And we created this channel to share what's working for our clients and share it with all of you. For number 1, it's a new way to view retirement that I'd be surprised if you've heard before. And then I'll share the biggest barrier, which is financial related. And then what you can do now to really break through that barrier so that you can feel a level 10 out of 10 confidence with your retirement plan. So let's get to the first reason to retire this year. And I believe that this is the start of the retirement renaissance. Now, let me explain what that means. Go back in time to the good old days when you were back in school. You might remember that Renaissance, it literally means rebirth. And after the Dark Ages, there was this explosion of art and science and human potential. You know, people like Da Vinci, they weren't just artists, they were inventors and they were scientists and they were dreamers. And they were redefining what was possible. And this was able to happen because for the first time, there were 3 critical things that lined up. 1 was the resources to pursue those interests. 2 was the freedom to think differently. And then 3, they had the time to explore and to create. Now, that might sound a little bit similar to where you might be, right? Think about it. We've accumulated resources through decades of work. We've got this technology and these tools that our parents probably never dreamed of. And for the first time, we can choose how to use our time and our attention to the way that fits us best. But here's what makes this so special. We're seeing this perfect storm of the pandemic showed us a new way of living and working. Technology makes learning and makes connecting easier than ever. And this is the first generation where we've got the health and the wealth to really truly reinvent retirement. So rather than think about it as retirement, maybe let's think about it as renaissance, right? This is our chance to rediscover who you are when you're not defined by your job title, to really use your wisdom and your experience in ways that you never thought. Just like the original Renaissance, it wasn't about going backwards. It was about moving forward in entirely new ways, right? Your retirement renaissance isn't about ending your work life. It's about beginning something entirely new, right? We don't want to be just running away from something. We want to have something that we're really running towards. Click the like button if you're ready to start your retirement renaissance. But to start the renaissance, we need something that's becoming more and more precious every single day. It's time and health. I've got a lot more to say on that, but I know what's on your mind right now. It's probably the money part of the equation, right? How can I be sure that I've got enough? So let's get into what really is that first big barrier to people retiring. And it's actually point 2 on why this is the year to retire. And I'll explain in a better way and explain why you're in a better position than you might think. And then the tactical thing to do to really improve your plan this year. The concept is called the spending paradox, meaning it's common for someone to delay their retirement date because they're hesitant to start spending what they've saved over the last 30 years. And here's the paradox part. The data actually shows 2/3 of retirees, so 67% or so, that following that simple 4% rule that we hear about, they actually end up with double their starting principal. Now that's good to know. You might be thinking, well, I'm different. My expenses are going to be a little bit higher. They're not 4%, or maybe I don't like the 4% rule. If that's you, here's a way to plan your retirement. And this is how we often do it at Streamline Financial for our clients. And it's different than the traditional method of planning retirement. The traditional way would say, take 4%, take that withdrawal rate, and then increase it by 3% per year for inflation. Again, that's a good place to start if you're just starting out to see where you stand. But there's another level to increase your confidence of your retirement plan. And that's by realizing that retirement often follows more of a smile pattern than a straight line. It kind of lines up with at the beginning of retirement. This is sometimes called the go-go years, when we've got the time and the health to go ahead and do the travel and do all the things we want to do. And then we get into maybe the slow go years, sometime around here, where maybe we're more content staying close to home and expenses often go down during that period of time. And then we get into the no-go years, where that's where we sometimes see medical expenses increase. So now how can you apply this to your plan? Well, here's one way to think about it. When you're planning your expenses, start with the essentials, right? These are the absolute needs, the things like housing, food, transport, insurance. And those are the things that will increase each year because of inflation. And you can work that into the plan, and it would look something like this. This is just a standard plan with expenses going up over time, and hopefully assets as well. And then we'll want to add in the wants. The wants are something different, right? They may not last every single year from now until the end of your life. There may be a period of time where you're going to travel a little bit more than normal, but it might only last 5 to 10 years during this period of time. Or maybe you've got weddings to pay for, or maybe there's other expenses out there that are going to be one-time expenses or a few years in a row. And those are the things we want to add separately than the needs. This we'll often call the what if scenarios, right? Those one-time expenses. And that's just helpful to know, to have the things that are the wants versus the actual essential needs. When you separate those two, it brings a lot of peace of mind to clients. And then the other part to look at is towards the end of life. Maybe we've got medical expenses. What would it look like if we had long-term care expenses that were increased or higher than normal medical expenses towards the end of life? Those would also be what if scenarios here. And what ends up happening is it's more of that smile pattern of expenses in retirement. And when it's all said and done, it's actually less than you thought. And if you'd like to apply that method to your own plan, but you're not ready to talk to a financial advisor yet, I'll show you how to do that on your own in this video. But for now, let's get into the next reason to retire this year. If you've seen someone before who, maybe a loved one, if you've seen them decline mentally or physically and you thought, I hope that doesn't happen to me. Well, we don't have to hope. We can actually do something about it. And it's not about extending our lifespan. It's more about how do we extend our health span. Lifespan is how long we live, and average age maybe about 78. But health span is something that ends a lot sooner than the end of life. And that's how long do we feel great? And this tends to be closer to 64 as the average. Health span is really the quality of life. And Dr. Peter Attia measures health span in 3 ways. One, it's being good physically, right? Free from pain, we've got muscle mass and we've got cardio endurance. Number 2 is we're good cognitively. We've got memory, processing speed, and we're all there mentally. And then number 3, the most important is, are we good emotionally? Are we fulfilled? Do we have a sense of purpose? Are our relationships good? From what we've seen, you could have the right money, you could have the physical strength, and even the cognitive ability. But if you're not good emotionally, retirement can feel quite empty and meaningless. So to increase that health span, we can do it now. And we just need time and energy to actually increase our health span so that we can live better later. Now, here's the good news. You've got an incredible opportunity right now to extend your health span, but it requires something that's hard to find when you're working full time, right? It's the time and it's the energy. John, someone I talked to not too long ago, was wrestling with this decision of retiring or not retiring, and he was successful at work, but there was no time to spend on the health part of life. And he became aware of what work was actually doing to his health because it was taking up time and all of the energy. And he made part of his retirement purpose, his reason for living, was to actually maximize his health span. That was one of his big goals in retirement. He learned about and applied these practices to his life. That's giving him goals and purpose in retirement, and challenge, which is so important after we end our career. His weekly routine, it includes learning in the morning, right? Reading Bible in the morning, other health-related books that he's interested in, books on longevity or other nonfiction books, and then also morning strength training and cardio. And then during the week, maybe 2 to 3 times a week, he tries to have lunch with family or friend. And then afternoon has time with his wife, walking often, and then cooking as well. They never used to have time to cook, but now he's interested in food and what it's doing to his body. So he's taking the time to do it. And then he's also got regular meditation to just manage his stress too, even in retirement, which is important. So he realized that he had these magic triangles of life, which you've heard about before if you're a subscriber to the channel. If you haven't seen it, this is the first third of life where we've got the most time because of our age, we're young, and we've got health because we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, but maybe we have the least amount of money because we're just starting our career. And then the middle period of life, we might have more money than we had. We still got health, but time is limited because we've got kids, we've got work, we've got other demands on our time. And then we get to this period in retirement for many, where you've got all the time, you've got all the money, but that's when we start to see health decline. But there's a magical fourth triangle that maybe you've seen before our health span, before our health starts to decline, and it's where everything is equal. This is the time to retire. And this is another reason to retire this year. It's that sweet spot where everything aligns. It could be in your 50s, 60s. There's 70-year-olds who are still making it happen. And health, you've got the time to make positive changes to your health, right? You've got the money to invest in your well-being. And then finally, you've got the time to make it all happen. So the question for many isn't, can I afford to retire? It really becomes, can I afford to wait? Almost every time I talk to a retiree and ask, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about the retirement? I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a lot. They say, do it sooner. Now that might all sound motivating and good, and that's great, but I think there's something else that might be stopping you. It's common for a lot of clients too. At least it's true for many of the subscribers of this channel as well. And that is, what about all of the uncertainty happening in the world right now, right? It could be the economy, it could be inflation, AI, or wars or other global tensions happening in the world. Those are valid concerns. But here's something interesting I've learned over the last 16 years of helping people retire. There is never a perfect time to retire. Take a look at this visual timeline over the last 16 years or so. These are all the reasons not to retire, right? We've got the global financial crisis, the debt crisis that happened a few years later. And then there was Brexit in 2016. There's many more. We had the global pandemic, inflation spike in 2022, and the banking crisis in 2023. And guess what? Clients that we helped during each of these periods, each of these years, they were able to retire, and they're still enjoying retirement right now. And when you zoom out, you could see even more. Going back to 1929, all of the big things, if you can pause this and zoom in a little bit, there's all sorts of things. There's always a worry, always a reason to not retire. Whether it was the Cold War in the 60s or the oil crisis in the 70s or the Gulf War and the tech bubble and 9/11. But here's what I learned in looking back and looking at history. Uncertainty isn't a bug in the system. It's just a feature. It's always going to be there. The only thing that changes is what the uncertain thing is, right? Mark Twain puts it perfectly when he said, I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. And Jesus has words about worry too. It's who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life. But the good news now, while we can't eliminate uncertainty, we can build into the retirement plan a way to weather it. Because think of uncertainty kind of like the weather, right? We can't control it, but we can build a house that's strong enough to withstand the storm. A client called me in March of 2020, and you remember what was happening at that time. And she was worried because everything that was happening in the world, right? Health and money-wise, I was worried too. And she had just retired, and she saw that the markets were going down. She saw her accounts getting impacted, and she was almost regretting. She was thinking, I shouldn't have retired this year. This is the worst time to do it. So we looked at her plan, her income plan, and then we looked at the buckets. And if you've seen this channel before, you kind of know that this is an interesting way to think about things. And we saw in bucket number 1, the short-term conservative bucket, she had 7 years worth of withdrawals in that bucket. So meaning she needed $10K a month to survive, and she had enough in there to last 7 years. And the great thing about it, it was over positive 3% per year to date that year. And that's all she needed to just feel relief and then feel like she had one less worry, one less financial worry to think about. And that's exactly why we run the Streamline investment system that uses tactical investment strategies like creating an income plan first, focus on income, and then that tells us how to be invested, right? What the risk should be. And a lot of times we want to take the least amount of risk possible with still have the highest chance of success. And then also just make sure you have the right asset classes for every market season, because there's 4 main economic seasons we can go through. And then also trigger-based rebalancing. So we're not letting emotions direct our decisions. And there's many other things to do there, but the main purpose is reducing worry and increasing confidence, and then also delivering these other very important things. Almost one of them is money related, but these other things are extremely important in retirement as well. Now, if you're not ready to work with a retirement specialist yet, I mentioned earlier in the video that there's a practical tool you can use to map out that smile spending pattern, right? There's a link below to my favorite retirement planner. And when you get it, here's what to do. Here's how to look or think about your expenses. Here's an example of when you get in there and you're looking at expenses. We've got recurring expenses. That's like don't pay attention to the numbers here because it's not a real plan, but recurring monthly expenses, maybe it's $10K a month. That's going up by 3% per year or whatever it might be. And then you've got the one time. These are the what if scenarios that you could plug in, and it's travel for more, the first 10 years of retirement, or it's medical expenses, whatever it might be. And then that'll give you an idea and have you look at that Monte Carlo simulation to see where we are for worst case scenario or best case scenario. Even if you're not 100% certain on some of these things, it's still probably a good investment of time to get in there, get more familiar with your retirement plan. And then if you need to, you can always talk to a CFP later and you'll have a better understanding of your plan before you get there. Now, if you're still with me, please give this video a like so more people like you can get inspired about their retirement renaissance and then make this next stage of life the best stage yet. And if you're curious more on some of the financial side, there's a video here on the 7 retirement accounts needed for a really good retirement. So I'll see you in that video and have a great rest of your day. Take care.